This is for
Yeah.
you.
Fly was flying on the team. Touchdown, touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a bird gang nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling with Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randolph. Season here, early time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in.
What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and it is Philly the podcast. So today we have a very special guest, man. After one time, your friend. After two, your family. After we're at like 3 or 4 now, Fran. I mean, we're gonna have to invite each other to Thanksgiving at this point, man. But
Joe, I agree.
we really are. But it's always a good time when we got Fran Duffy on. Fran, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. It's obviously an exciting time to be a Philly sports fan right now. Really, really fired up for the weeks to come.
Definitely, man. It's a lot of fun. Like you said, Philadelphia is on fire right now. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the Birds. We're gonna talk a little bit about Philadelphia. Now, the last time I did have you on was for our home opener. So we were talking about week 1. We were talking about going into that home opener. A lot has changed since then. A lot has happened since then, I should say. I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest surprises so far from the Eagles this year for you?
So that's a good question. I don't know. The thing is like we knew that we could be excited about this team, right? We knew with all the offseason acquisitions on both offense and defense that there was a lot to be excited about and that this team could be this good. But now it's just a matter of like, all right, like now you have to go out and do it, right? And so week 1, they get that win again. Now week 2, all right, Minnesota Vikings, Justin Jefferson, that defense completely shut down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. How good is this Vikings team? Well, the Eagles go and handle business, and that's all they've done so far through the first 6 games. So look, there's plenty of football left to be played. I don't know that I would say like that something has been a huge surprise. Now it's time to go and prove it, and that's what they've done so far through their first 6 tests.
Yeah, definitely. And it has. It's crazy because the NFL landscape this year, I feel like it's been just it's been out there. There's teams that we all thought were going to be great that are struggling and vice versa. So it has been interesting. And one thing that it has been very interesting is this defense making, I feel like, a complete 180, especially when you look at the numbers, right? And I know, dive into the film, what's really going on. I want to ask you this. Is this like a change in schemes, or is this really just a testament to, Jonathan Gannon finally getting the pieces to the puzzle and the guys that he needs to work his system?
Have a coaching change, especially when you have a change in system that is like from one end of the spectrum all the way over to the other, it can take some time, right? And so that's going to be a little bit of a slow build to get you ready to where, all right, we're going to do everything now that we want to be able to do. A change in talent certainly helps, right? When you add in James Bradbury and Jordan Davis, and you go down the line of all these other pieces that they've added on that side of the football. But at the end of the day, when you look at the guys that were here a year ago, those guys are more comfortable. Those guys are able to bring these other players along and help those guys out. So you've seen spike and play from Slay and from Maddox and from you go down the list, Josh Sweat, all the TJ Edwards, all these guys, Marcus Epps, everybody playing so much more confidently within the structure of this scheme. They're not different players. They're the same players that were there a year ago, but with confidence comes increased play speed and that ability to execute your role at a little bit of a higher level. They're just doing with everything that they're being asked to do right now. Is it always perfect? No, but defensive football is not perfect. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows when you play defense in football. So at the end of the day, this defense is going out. They're being opportunistic. They're creating turnovers at an extremely high rate right now. The plus 12 turnover ratio is through 12 games. I'm pretty sure it's through 6 games. I think it's the first time since 2013, I believe. So almost a decade that a team is this high in turnover margin in the first 6 weeks. So at the end of the day, this is a team that is really firing on all cylinders. And now it's just a matter of continuing to do so over the second half of the year.
Yeah, you bring up the turnovers, and you could talk about the secondary improving. You could talk about the linebacking core. Like you said, a lot of guys definitely taking that next step. And another place that I was a little bit worried about last year that is making me very proud this year is our defensive line. And we add another dog to that room. We were able to go out there and get Bears Robert Quinn. I want to ask you, obviously we're going to have to kind of wait and see how he's deployed and see how quickly they feel comfortable kind of unleashing him. But in your mind and how, in your opinion, I guess, how would you see the Philadelphia Eagles using Robert Quinn on this defense?
Well, that's the thing is when you have all of these other players up front, you're not leaning on him to play 80% of the snaps, right? And that's going to be a huge plus for Robert Quinn is that maybe the snap count is not as high as what he's had in Chicago, but the opportunity to get after the quarterback and be productive will certainly be there in this defensive structure. You've got Reddick, you've got Sweat. You've got Graham. You've got some other young player. My guess is that you'll see more Quinn and Graham paired together with that second group. But at the end of the day, these guys are all going to play plenty of snaps. I would venture to guess that early on you'll see him featured in one of the two packages, either that 5-man front, that group that has Jordan Davis on it, or in that 4-man front. We'll wait to see exactly which of those two groups it is. But my guess is you'll see him kind of featured in one of those groups to start, just because he's only been here for a couple of days, and then slowly get more of an increased role. But the thing with Robert Quinn is that he can play anywhere you kind of need him, right? I mean, he mostly off the right side. That's where he's spent most of his career. But if you need him to play a little bit tight to the tackle, he can do that. He's kicked inside at times in certain rush packages where coordinators can get creative and run all kinds of stunts and twists. That's not something that the Eagles have done at a high volume so far. But when you add in a guy like Quinn, that opens up that door to be able to do so even more. So I think when you have a guy like this, he can plug it where it leaks. But at the end of the day, you're going to try and put him in position.
Yeah, and you said groups, and I think that we have like a hockey team when it comes to our defensive lines. It's just every 5 plays you're seeing a different group of guys, and I think that that's what's really made us successful, is being able to have those different groups and different sets of players, and being able to add, like I said, during the first half of this season, I felt very comfortable with our pass rush. I'm not saying it was perfect, but I felt we had some dogs out there. But in your opinion, how big or how important was it to add to that rotation and add another guy that can just kind of keep the guys that we've had here already even fresher going into a long 17-game season?
There's a saying in football: you can never have enough pass rushers, and regardless of if you're in need of one or if you've got a pretty good group already, adding another super talented one, a guy that just had 18.5 sacks a year ago, to the mix can only help, right? So adding in a Robert Quinn who can come in and be fresh in the second half of game against tackles that have been in on every stretch. All you need is that one high leverage play. He has been a guy that has created the big play. We talked about that before with Hassan Reddick, is that he's got that ability to take the football away, and he's done that at such a high rate ever since he's been in the NFL. Robert Quinn is just like that. So hey, it's a situation. Take for example, Jacksonville Jaguars game. The Jaguars get the ball back late fourth quarter. They're down by a touchdown. Their defense just got to stop. We punt the ball back to them. All right, the defense needs to get a stop. Well, now you get Hassan Reddick. Very first play of the drive. Beats the right tackle, gets home, gets the ball out, and gets the ball back to the defense. That's game, set, match, right? So adding another guy and Robert Quinn that also has that ability. We think back to Brandon Graham in the Super Bowl. Just having that guy that can, at the end of a game, and that was the thought process for the Rams a year ago when they traded for Von Miller, was like, look, we know Von Miller is not the Von Miller of 2014. We know that that's not who he is. We need him to be that guy 3 times a game, 5 times a game, 10 times a game. And if he's able to also tutor and bring along some of the young guys, be a great person in the locker room, that's the value you're getting. And, Robert Quinn, he does not have a Super Bowl yet. So this is a guy that is hungry for one. Adding him into this really, really good addition for this Eagles defense.
Definitely. I know he's not the only person in that locker room hungry for a ring. And not the only person in Philly hungry for another one. So it'll be nice to be able to get him one. Now, I know we're coming out of bye week, right? Bye weeks are always nice, especially when you're going into it 6-0. I mean, it felt very, very good. But you can never stay complacent, right? As an NFL team, you said it, I think, going into that home opener, that it's like it's a new season almost every week, right? 17 seasons in a 17-game season. So I want to ask you, we saw the addition of Robert Quinn, but how other ways, maybe that we didn't necessarily see, do you think the Eagles are trying to improve? What are some things you think they looked at in this bye week and maybe have a different way of moving forward throughout the rest of the year? Or do you think they're just, feeling comfortable staying pat?
I can tell you they definitely don't feel comfortable. They definitely won't be standing pat. That's for sure. I think when you look at this coaching staff and the player, know to not get complacent. And so, they're basically what they'll do, or what they did last week was, hey, let's look at the things that we're doing really, really well. And then let's look at the things that we're not doing well. How do we fix the things that we're not doing well? And how do we do more of what we've excelled at so far? And so at the end of the day, on both, you look at the defense, the inconsistencies on third down, they've been excellent in the first half of games. And in the second half, as teams have run more tempo, it's something we talked about last week on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, did a little bit of a statistical project and just looked and like, all right, what's the difference defensively, first half, second half? And one big thing is that with the Eagles offense being so explosive in the first half of games, teams felt the need that they needed to go up tempo. The Eagles defense were way out in front of everybody else in the NFL when facing up tempo plays in the second half of games. And so some of those plays can be kind of random. Oh, you get the 3rd and 17 long screen pass to Rondale Moore. And it's like, all right, like, that sucks. You hate to give those are random plays that happen, but look, missed tackles are things that can improve. The Eagles were one of the worst tackling teams in the second half of games over the first 6 weeks. So just little things like that. Hey, these are things we can fine tune and just continue to improve. And then I think offensively, just continuing to do what you do well, right? Getting a little bit better against the blitz, a little bit better on third down, but they're one of the best third down teams in football in the first 6 games of the season. So this is a team that is definitely doing a lot right, but you can always find ways to improve as well.
Yeah, and I think that's scary for a lot of NFL teams. I mean, we're going into a bye week. We were able to get healthy, 6-0, yet there's still, like Jalen Hurts likes to say, there's still a lot left on the table. There's still a lot that we can improve upon. So I'm excited to kind of see that happen now. And even going further, you look at our schedule and you look at the quarterbacks we have to face, the teams we have to face, and it feels like we can end this year with an amazing record. I'm not going to sit here and yell 17-0, but it feels good. It feels like we could really end this with a bang. I want to ask you, what's the feel in the building? Like, has the expectations changed at all? I know going into this, we were, kind of just taking the success within the building process. Has that mindset changed at all? Or is it still, let's continue to build and what happens as a result kind of happens as a result?
I think this is a team that when you walk into that locker room, like this is what their expectations were. It's like the first question you asked me, were you surprised by anything? I don't know that surprise is necessarily the word. I think it's, hey, this is a team that knew, they felt they could be good, right? They had a lot of confidence, but with how they finished last year, we are a good football team. Look at the additions we made on both sides of the football. But to steal a phrase from across the street from the Sixers, right? You have to trust the process that brought you here, right? So understanding like, hey, we've taken it one game at a time. We are not going to just roll out of bed and beat a team in the NFL. That's not how this works. So you take each game as it comes, do everything you can to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers next week, and then you go on the road in a short week to play the Houston Texans. That has an offense that they've got some playmakers. You go the next week after that, Washington, division game. They're going to be coming back. It's tough to beat a team twice in one season. What are they going to do to bounce back after what we did to them a few weeks back, right? So I think every single week you have to show the respect to your opponent, show the respect to the process that got you here, trip ups along the way. That's when you look back and say, man, that was a really, really successful season. But I don't think, and I'm sure watching the press conferences, listening to these guys in the locker room, you get the sense that they are not going to sleepwalk through the second half of the season. I think they're going to continue to do what got them here.
That's what we want to hear, man. That is what we want to hear. And look, I mean, we're actually in a funny position because we are undefeated, right, atop the league and the NFC, but we have some guys right behind us. There's not much breathing room in this NFC East. I know you're a football fan. I know you love football from I'm sure you go out there and watch the Pee Wee and scout. I know you love football. So I want to ask you about the NFC East real quick. The Giants 1 loss, Cowboys 2, Washington 3. There's not much breathing room in this NFC East. How real do you think this division is? Do you think this is a division that can maybe send 3 to the playoffs this year?
It's certainly possible with the way that the rest of the NFC is playing right now that they could be 3 teams from the, again, it's just every season is different. And that's why like doing all the season prognostications in the summer and the schedule predictions, it's almost like a fruitless exercise. It's fun to do when you get into May and June, but the NFC East was laughed at as maybe like one of the worst divisions in football a year ago. And now they're getting the last laugh here right now. I think when you look at Dallas, they're starting to get a little bit healthier, obviously with Dak back in the lineup, trying to get him back to 100%. The Giants are playing right now with a lot of confidence, and they're playing with a winning formula. They're doing a lot of the same things right now that the Eagles were doing a year ago, where they're going to lean heavily into the run game. They're going to play sound defense. They're not going to beat themselves. They're not going to give up explosive plays, and they're going to put pressure on you. Say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do it. So you got to come and beat us. And by the way, we're going to scratch and claw through every single quarter of this football game. So I think that both teams are well coached. This Dallas Cowboys defense is legitimate, no question. We saw that a couple weeks ago, right? That is a tough unit to be able to move the ball against. So I think when you look at both the Giants and Cowboys, two very formidable opponents, and that will certainly help. Going back to that last question in terms of how do you kind of keep that approach, that mental sharpness going week to week. Well, it helps when you've got the Cowboys and Giants right on your heels in the NFC East.
Yeah, definitely. And I see everybody chatting up in the comments. I see you guys. I love you guys. I will ask you this. I'm not going to ask you specifics because I don't want to put you in that position. But do you think that the Eagles maybe, or Howie Roseman in specific, maybe have another move up his sleeve?
Potentially. I mean, look, I think the people would be shocked by how often like teams are talking to each other like all the time about stuff. And there's so much that's left on the cutting room floor. There's a large majority of these discussions are left on the cutting room floor. It's like, yeah, like this guy could have been traded, but no, instead now he's off to the Pro Bowl, right? Like so often those conversations are had. And so, yeah, we know that this front office and Howie Roseman, they're very, very aggressive at every conversation that can be had around the NFL. So, yeah, I would expect that they're going to continue to listen and be a part. But whether anything comes to fruition, it takes two to tango, right? So you still need another team to be willing to accept that deal.
Definitely. I think any group chat, any phone call that ever happens involving the NFL, I'm pretty sure Howie Roseman somehow is in there because he has his ears to the street. So I love it. Now, I want to look at the Steelers a little bit. Obviously, that's our next opponent. They're struggling a little bit, have a young quarterback. They have a rookie quarterback. That's a Philly fan, so maybe he'll show a little bit of love. But what do you think the Steelers are going to try to do to the Eagles, and how do you think the Eagles will try to kind of combat that?
Well, I think we'll start with the Steelers defense. They have been middle of the pack so far this season in terms of blitz rate and stunt rate. I would expect that to be a little bit higher than normal. I would expect they'll try and see if they can send pressure. Their secondary has been banged up over the last few weeks. And so I think they've kind of backed the dogs off a little bit from a pressure standpoint, make sure that they were sound in coverage. But Cam Sutton, closer to 100%. Akella Witherspoon, closer to 100%. Minka Fitzpatrick, now 100%. So getting those guys back in the lineup, Arthur Millette, the slot corner, back to 100%. So getting those guys back, I think, is big for them. And now they can be a little bit more aggressive with their pressure calls. I would expect that to be the case, especially when we get to third down in this game. They've played a good mix of both man and zone coverage, and they disguise things really, really well. Minka Fitzpatrick, one of the best in the game. I think he's tied for the lead in interceptions at the safety spot over the last 3 years. He's had like 14 picks in 3 seasons, which is outstanding. So you have to be aware of where Minka Fitzpatrick is at any given point. Also another St. Peter's Prep. But I think when you look over to the opposite side of the football with the Steelers offense, I think they're going to try and do exactly what they've been doing. And so when you look at this offense, they've got a certain identity, right? That they know what they want to be. They're going to attack downfield. They're like in the top 5, top 6 field throw. So Kenny Pickett's going to be attacking vertically with George Pickens, the rookie second-round pick at wide receiver. He's their leading pass catcher. Deontay Johnson as well. You get those two guys on the outside. Johnson's the better route runner. Pickens is the above-the-rim guy, the Alshon Jeffrey mold of go up and win and take the ball off the top of your head and throw it down on you. That's what he can do on the outside. And then in the middle of the field, they're going to work the ball to Freiermuth. They run a lot of like little two-man, like high-low concepts with him in the middle of the field, a ton of jet sweeps. So you got to be ready for those. That they run that more than anybody in the NFL. And then they're going to have their share of the run game as well. The run game has not been super productive, but Najee Harris at 6'2", 240, and with light feet, he's got great hands. They use him in the check down all the time, in the screen game all the time. You've got to be ready for things that he can do as a playmaker as well. And so they've got playmakers. I think Pickett's played better than what his stat line would lead you to believe and what the win-loss column would lead you to believe. A couple of those interceptions, you have receivers falling down. One was on a Hail Mary at the end of a game. So you start to kind of write off something. It's not as bad as you think. He's standing in the pocket. He's making some tough throws. That will be the case in this game. He's going to make some big time throws in this game. But now it's just a matter for the Eagles of not letting those chunks turn into like extra large chunks, right? So they love to attack downfield. They're the worst team in the NFL when it comes to yards after catch. They're at the bottom of the league. So you want to continue to let that be the theme, right? Don't let them get any of those cheap plays after the catch with the ball in their hands. If they do complete a pass, get them down to the ground and get to the next play.
Definitely. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I think we're favored by like 10.5 points. We'll see if it's, I never like to get too overly excited. I try to keep my expectations down. This way, if something happens, I'm not too upset. It is what it is.
But
But
2004, Joe, the last time the Eagles were 7-0, they went out to Pittsburgh, I believe. That game was in Pittsburgh, and the Pittsburgh Steelers knocked this team off. That was a different Steelers team, but they also had a rookie quarter. So you have to be ready at all times for any of these kind of upsets for sure.
yeah, you got a guy like Tomlin out there. I'll never discredit Tom. I think that you have a great coach like that, you always got a chance. And they're trying to grow. We've been there. Eagles fans have been there. We've seen the process. So you never know when it finally, actually clicks for especially young players. Which actually brings me to my next point. I wanted to talk about one of our young players, actually Jordan Davis. I know, the box score doesn't tell the full story with a guy like Jordan Davis. So I want to ask you, what have you seen from the maturation of Jordan Davis? I know he's getting a little bit more burn, a couple more snaps here and there. What do you see from Jordan Davis? How high is his ceiling getting? I mean, I think this kid can be something serious, but how do you feel about him?
Yeah, I think when you look at Jordan Davis, this is just the normal growth of a rookie playing in the NFL, and not all of these guys are going to be the same and come in and he's got his package that he's in right now. Doesn't mean that that's all he's going to be moving forward for the rest of his career, but this is his package that he's working with, and that's that 5-man front. He's going to play up right over top of the center as the nose tackle. You got Fletcher Cox and Hargrave flanking him on either side. You get Milton Williams and Tui Pelotu in there working as well. In the middle of that defense, he's outstanding against the run. He is an immovable object. I thought, to me, like when he was playing his best football, I want to say, was like week 4, week 5. And I thought in those games, you saw like the explosiveness off the ball and then through contact. So taking on a block and then shedding that block and flying off, so much juice coming through contact from Jordan Davis in those games, and continue to see more of that as that confidence grows with him and his technique continues to improve. That's where you'll see those physical tools really come to a head. I love his motor. He has shown that from the jump. Day one, he showed that in his college tape as well. But when you look at very, very nicely, huge impact for this team. Not just like, oh, what is he going to do in the box score wise? Like you said, it's not, the stat line is not always going to tell the story, but he certainly helps everybody along that defensive front when he's in the game. But again, just understanding what is his role right now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be his role in 2026, right? I think that you have to kind of separate those two. But right now, he's playing an integral role with this Eagles defensive front.
Yeah, it's fun watching him grow, and I think he's only. I say grow. He can't get any bigger, but grow. As a player, that man is huge. He is an immovable object. It's fun watching him play, and I don't think the Eagles have had a guy like that. I don't think there's a lot of guys like that in the NFL, period. But I don't think the Eagles have ever had a guy like that. So it's fun to be able to, say we finally do. I got one last question for you, Fran. It has nothing to do with football, but I know you are a Philly guy through and through. I know you're teaching your son the ways, which I absolutely love. Look, the Phillies are on an unbelievable run. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this. I think I know the answer because my girlfriend is born and raised in Philly. She's been asking me who's going to the World Series every single day, so I know she's hyped. But first off, what does it mean to see your Phillies go through this run? And two, what would it mean if they capped it off against the Astros and really pulled that off and win the World Series?
I mean, it would be awesome. I was down there when they won in 2008, and that was the first World Championship of my life as a Philly sports fan. And so to me, like seeing that and being there for that was outstanding. I can remember walking down the street, literally from Citizens Bank Park down Broad Street. We went up to the art museum, and I walked from there back to Temple because I was working at Temple football at the time. And just the joy and the celebration, and it was everything that everybody remembers that's listening to this podcast. I don't know how old everybody was at that point, but I was college age, and it was just a great celebration. I was there when the Eagles won in 2017, and at the parade, and just the joy in people's faces, and the joy, like it's just, you can't describe it, right? It's just, and it's funny. Like I was explaining this to my son, after this was after they won the first game against the Padres at game 3 of that series. And my son just said, like, yeah, like everybody's happy. I'm like, yeah, like that's what that's what happens, is that everybody gets really, really happy. And you start to see that throughout the city. And it's awesome. That's why it's a great time to be a Philly sports fan right now. Hopefully the Phils can continue to pull this out. You get 4 more wins and put this baby away. It's definitely an exciting time to be a Philly sports fan.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anybody outside of Houston that wants the Astros to win. So this might be the first time that everybody loves Phil. You know, we're usually the guys that everybody is hating on, but I think this is the first time the whole world wants to see them win. So I'm happy for the Phillies. I'm happy for the city. This is big. And I'm happy because we get 2 parades. That's always a beautiful thing. So, hey, I'm cool with it. We're going to have the Eagles or we're going to have the Phillies go crazy. So I'm hyped. This is a good year. But, Fran, it's always an amazing time when you come on here. I feel like I leave so much more.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for having me again, Joe. We'll talk again soon.
Everywhere, this is for
Yeah.
you.
Fly was flying on the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a bird gang nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling with Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randall. Season here, really time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for